Luc Bouchard with Solvac Life Coaching Services. I've been a certified life skills coach for 22 years, and I specialize in men's issues and how men disconnect emotionally from others, and specifically their children. Welcome. Today is the 54th video of the 72-day challenge. We're in the 8th week, and our weekly theme is men and depression. Our daily focus is men as fathers, and our topic today, and it's a long one, is the effects upon children when their fathers are emotionally disconnected or depressed. I'm going to start today's video with the concept of truisms and what a truism is. And it's going to launch me into the rest of the video. But as most of you know, a truism is something that you can count on to be there, or that's going to happen. So death and taxes is a truism. I will pay taxes for the rest of my life, and one day will die. Another truism I know is that the sun's going to come up tomorrow. And another truism after that, or in addition to that, is the fact that if I drop this pen 100 times, it will fall 100 times. I believe and subscribe to gravity. So gravity will work all the time. Those are the truisms in my life. Some other truisms I have when it comes to children and what children need to be healthy comes from being a father, and from the 10 years I worked with children in residential treatment facilities, and these children's behaviors were so extreme that they couldn't even go to foster care. And that experience really helped me understand a lot of human behaviors and what happens when children are when their earliest experiences, how they will be affected for the rest of their life. And it was really my foundation of a lot of the work I do. And I will often focus upon the effects upon children, as you know in these videos, and how that kind of carries over into their adult life. But a few truisms I have when it comes to children is that they need boundaries, they need consistency, they need affection, and the biggest one of all, out of all those are all important, but they also need attention. And what happens when children don't get attention is really what this whole video is about. In the 10 years that I worked with these children, with the children, and this is primarily from 11 and younger, and as young as 5, something I witnessed on a regular basis and got training for was the idea that children will seek out attention negatively if they can't get it positively. Because positive attention is better than negative attention, and negative attention is far greater than no attention at all. And not getting attention for children is beyond toxic. It's soul killing. It is just not healthy for them. And they know it, and they will act out. And a lot of the behaviors I saw with the children I worked with was them acting out to get some sort of attention because they were so needy. And it damages children to not get attention. So what that damage will look like is going to be things like they don't feel like they're wanted, they don't feel important, they certainly don't feel loved, they don't feel needed, and they don't feel like they have any sense of belonging. And any of those, they don't feel loved, wanted, important, needed, or belonging, are not okay for adults to experience. We don't want to experience that in our adult life. It certainly is not good for children. And when children are experiencing this in their formative years, it does long-lasting damage. And a lot of the people I work with, and a lot of clients I have worked with, have had unresolved issues of their lack of attention or being ignored in their childhood. And there's two ways that children get ignored. One is physically or emotionally, or the combination of the two. And when you have a child that is not getting any a positive attention, or any attention at all for that matter, it has these not good effects on them, as I mentioned, and I'm going to cover some of the long-lasting effects when children later in this video. But now I want to talk about is what happens when you have children of fathers who are emotionally absent or depressed, and what happens to the children and how are they affected. So if we look at the fact that men are socialized to distance themselves from their emotions and not be emotionally present to themselves, how they're going to be present to anyone else. And so that's how men generally are. And you take depression on top of that, where they are really shut down and just not present. And you add that to the fact that children, specifically boys, are socialized to distance themselves from their emotions. What is the effect upon that upon children? Well, you get children that are learning to, specifically boys, to be even more emotionally detached. And some of the stats that we know about what happens when children have absent fathers, physically, emotionally, and conversely depressed, are things that I covered in video 26 by Dr. Gary Neener. And what he talked about, and I'm just going to read them off from my list here, is that when fathers are absent in their children's lives, those children are 5 times more likely to commit suicide. They're 32 times more likely to run away. They're 20 times more likely to have behavioral disorders. They're 14 times more likely to commit sexual assault, that would be boys. 9 times more likely to drop out of high school. 10 times more likely to engage in chemical substance abuse. 9 times more likely to end up in a state-run institution, and 20 times more likely to end up in prison. Now, these are stats from the States, and what Dr. Neener did was he basically looked at across the board in the United States as to what happens when there's not father involvement, and these were his conclusions. And we are not, in Canada, we are not really that far from the States. I think that it's pretty damning evidence about what happens when fathers aren't involved. And we can't just dismiss it because it happened in the States, it's not going to happen here. Well, we follow in the States, in the footsteps of the States in so many ways, and we just have to pay attention to this. So many men that I work with as a life skills coach have had absent fathers and emotionally distant fathers, and who probably had fathers who were depressed. They certainly had fathers that were not emotionally present. And what is very clear to me is how the cycle has been perpetuated from great-great-grandfathers to grandfathers to fathers to sons. And the reason why I'm focusing on this in this week of men and depression, in this 8th week, is the fact that we need to break the cycle, gentlemen. We all need to do it differently with our children. And that if you are emotionally disengaged from your children, and if you suffer from depression or even a mild form of depression, if you can even admit that, well, likelihood it came from your father. Not the depression, but that learned behavior. Boys have it tough enough as it is with how they're socialized. Girls too, but my focus is males. And our boys need us. And if they're being socialized because greater society says you have to distance yourself from your emotions, then we really need to be emotionally present with our boys, and we need to break that cycle, and we need to be here and now and not spending what I call quantity time versus quality time. As I mentioned in a previous video, quality time is where you're actually engaged with your boys and you're with your children, and you're there with them in the moment. Quantity time is just hanging out with them and watching TV, sports, or going and doing something that you're really not interacting with them. You're just kind of, you're in the same area, but you're not really connecting with them. And I ask the question I always ask at this time in my videos: what do your children deserve? What do you deserve? Did you not deserve a better relationship with your father? I know I did. Our children need us. Your children need you to be emotionally available, and they need you to be a better role model if you're not role modeling your emotional availability very well. So I bring this forward to understand, to throw it on the table and help hopefully the audience listening to us understand is that when you're emotionally disconnected or you're depressed, it's not only you that's affected by it. Your children and your spouses and everyone else in your life is. And if you think that you're just suffering alone, other people are suffering also. And what do you want to do different? And ultimately, how do you want to live the rest of your life? Luc Bouchard with Solve Act Life Coaching Services. I've been a certified life skills coach for 20 years, and I specialize in men's issues and how come men keep themselves safe. I hope you have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow for video 55. Take care.